So I'll hand over to you to give us your presentation.
Tēnā koutou. E kore rawa au e mihi ki tēnei kaupapa whakaheahea. Koe anō me mihi ka tika ki te hunga e whakapaukaha ana mo te tiriti o Waitangi te take. Ka mihi hoki tēnei uri o Ngāti Whare Raukawa kia koutou e whakarongo mai ana, nō reira tēnā tātou katoa. I am strongly opposed to this bill, and I take heart from the quality of the many excellent submissions that I've heard today opposing it. I take my submission as read, but I would like to add the following comments. For as long as the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi have been enshrined in legislation, the Crown has manipulated the concept to serve its own implacable sense of entitlement. The Crown has always sought to enforce an interpretation of the principles that gives effect to a watered-down version, or watered-down interpretation of the English language document, the treaty, and an interpretation that turns the Māori language document, Te Treaty o Waitangi, on its head. This bill continues that pattern of behaviour. What sets it apart from earlier efforts, perhaps, is that this time the Crown can't even be bothered trying to mask its true intentions by hiding behind protestations of good faith. This time, the Crown is explicitly, indeed proudly, pursuing an interpretation of the principles that flies in the face of advice from anyone with relevant expertise, including its own officials. It's long been my view that an air of confusion has been quite cynically fostered concerning the true meaning of Te Treaty o Waitangi, when in fact its meaning is very simple. Te Treaty, written in Te Reo Māori, was signed by over 500 rangatira and by Governor Hobson. It reaffirmed the supreme political authority, Te Tino Rangatiratanga, of the rangatira, but delegated kāwanatanga to the Crown so that it could regulate the conduct of British citizens who were living here in Aotearoa. In effect, the rangatira were stipulating that the Crown take responsibility for its own people as a condition for being allowed to remain here. The English language treaty was signed by just 39 people, I suspect by accident more than by design. It stated, of course, that the rangatira ceded sovereignty to the Crown in return for a promise to uphold certain property rights, to accord them certain rights and privileges of British citizenships. Now, there's never been any suggestion that the implications of the term sovereignty were mentioned, let alone explained, to these 39 people. Now, it's plain that the Crown intended to acquire sovereignty in 1840. However, that intention was never communicated to any of the Māori signatories. The Waitangi Tribunal has rightly concluded that the meaning and effect of the 1840 agreement can only be found in what Britain's representatives clearly explained to the rangatira and the rangatira then assented to. The agreement's meaning and effect is not to be found in Britain's unexpressed intention to acquire sovereignty. So the truth of the matter is that the English language document, the treaty, is not actually worth the paper it is written on. Now, the Crown has long tried to fudge the fact that it never legitimately acquired sovereignty, utilising whatever tools have come to hand. And over the past 50 years, the principles of the treaty have proven to be as useful a tool as any, as is amply demonstrated by this latest attempt to make Te Treaty mean whatever the Crown says it means. Principle 1, as described in the bill, represents a flagrant breach of Te Treaty. It unilaterally replaces the delegated authority granted to the Crown by rangatira in 1840 with a self-proclaimed supremacy. The Crown is giving itself a free hand to exercise sovereign authority unfettered by Te Treaty obligations. Principle 2 of the bill strips the heart out of Tino Rangatiratanga. It transforms Tino Rangatiratanga from the supreme political authority that it was, and that it still is, to a grudging acceptance of the shamefully paltry entitlements conceded as part of the so-called settlement of historical grievances. Principle 3, with its frankly facile promotion of equality as a concept, merely serves to lock in and accentuate the social, political and economic disparities brought about by 185 years of the Crown's abuse of kāwanatanga. Now, the Crown has acquired the ability to behave with such reckless disregard for truth or decency, not because it's stronger or cleverer, or because it's in any way superior to the rest of us. The Crown occupies its current position of privilege by virtue of the fact that it has lied, cheated and infected its way to dominance during the decades immediately following Te Treaty o Waitangi. Now, the precise detail of the process by which the Crown acquired dominance may vary from iwi to iwi, from rohe to rohe, but the general pattern remains depressingly constant. Despite the fervour with which the Crown has sought to control the national Te Treaty narrative, the principles of the treaty have played their part in shifting that narrative over the past 50 years. This is due in large part to the intellectual rigour and the courage displayed by members of the Waitangi Tribunal. Its report on this bill is a perfect example of this, and I commend that report to you. The Tribunal has worked hard to educate the nation, reaching beyond the Crown obduracy to influence public opinion. It's done this despite chronic under-resourcing and an endless succession of governments intent on ignoring or minimising its findings and recommendations wherever possible. However, whatever progress has been achieved since 1975 would be erased with the passage of this bill. This bill, to me, epitomises what I regard as lowest common denominator politics. It panders to the basest of colonial instincts. It incentivises those who have benefited from the immoral conduct of their forebears to support an interpretation of Te Treaty that guarantees the preservation of their ill-gotten gains at our expense. The Treaty of Waitangi Principles Bill seeks to cultivate greed, arrogance, ignorance and insecurity in order to achieve its goals. As I stated in my written submission, no person with a shred of integrity or intellect would wish to have any association with it. So I urge this committee to demonstrate a measure of integrity and intellect by relegating this bill to the dustbin of history where it rightfully belongs. And importantly, as others have said, by reminding the Crown that its energies would be far better spent coming to terms with the urgent need for constitutional transformation, as so ably foreshadowed by Matake Mai Aotearoa, by the Paparahi o Te Raki Waitangi Tribunal, and by many others. Tanoi tēnā mo tēnei wā tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, Ani. Thank you for your submission. We've got time for a couple of questions. The first from Steve Abel and then Marimino Kapkingi.
In terms of your reference, your very powerful submission and your candour is greatly appreciated. Is it cynical in your view to use this concept of equality while the underlying motive is to nullify Māori tino rangatiratanga?
Absolutely. I listened with interest to Marilyn Waring's discussion of equality, and I thought she was bang on. Talking about equality when actually substantively what this bill would be doing would be removing any small gains made towards achieving a greater measure of equality for Māori is disingenuous and extremely cynical.
Kia ora.
Thank you, and Marimino.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tēnā koe ani, kānui te mihi kā koe. E pai hoki o te rongo i wau whakaaro nui me te katoa o tō kōrero tēnā koe. You made this statement cynically fostered, which of course there was a smile on some of our faces. And then my question therefore is, to what end do you think, because that's, I mean, it's just so well put, but to what end?
Yes, the so-called confusion surrounding the meaning of Te Treaty, it's been deliberately fostered because even though the truth of what the treaty means is very simple, it's a very inconvenient truth for any person who is wedded to the colonial obsession with power. It's a very inconvenient truth, and so therefore they have to try and spin this whole kind of myth about it. Oh, it's so hard, and we have to take forever figuring out what it means. We all know what it means. It's clear as.
Tēnā koe.
Good, Ani. Thank you. That's
Mr.
the
Chair.
10 minutes allocated for your time today, so I just want to say on behalf of the committee, thank you for taking the time to be with us this afternoon.
I've got to say, I love that submission there. It literally just basically hits the point there. Just for, was it 5B's question on about ACT not attending? ACT is technically only allowed one seat around the table, and I believe Todd Stevenson has been filling that on those particular submission days anyway, as he often is actually around many different select committee tables, because he's on, I think, at least 4 select committees from what I gather. Unfortunately, David Seymour, as a minister, yes, he could listen to it, but he'll have to listen to it from the audience or from a live stream, which, you know, whether he would or not, I don't know. I can picture him playing it on the background and nodding and turning up when he gets the submissions he likes to hear, and then hit the mute key when the submissions are not happening, or the ones he don't like what's just recently gone through there. I'm actually surprised by the volume of how that's actually gone through. Next up, we've got the Whanetoa IMPD submission.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook.